give a moment or two for people to arrive. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us today for the first virtual Young Forwarder Network event of 2025. I'm just going to wait a moment for more people to sign in, and then we'll get going in a minute.
Thank you, Sharon.
Okay, right. Well, we've reached over 100 attendees already this afternoon, so I'm going to start the meeting. This is the first virtual Young Forwarder Network event for 2025, and to this event we'd like to welcome Curt Wilson and Kiel Ursin of Boomerang Carnets. They are going to run through the function and the benefits of using Carnets for us. So I'm sure that's going to be a fascinating presentation from them. So we'll get started. I'm Sharon Hammond, Events Executive here at BIFA, for those of you who've not met me before. We have a whole range of events here at BIFA that we organise, both in-person events and virtual. Today's event is being recorded, and after today I will send you a link to the recording so that you can review it or share it with colleagues that weren't able to make it to the event today. So I hope that's useful. Boomerang Carnet have also kindly said that we can share the slide deck, so I will be sending that to you later. Clara. Sorry, Clara. There was another person online just now called Chloe Thomas, but Clara Thomas, are you with us today, Clara? Oh, let me find you, Clara, and see if I can unmute you.
Oh, it's just been unmuted.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Okay, right. So if you'd like to make a brief introduction, Clara.
So hi everyone, thanks for joining today. If you've not been to an event before, the YFN is just sort of a place to listen to industry experts and sort of network with other young forwarders, and it's great coming to sessions like today's where hopefully we'll all learn a lot. I'll just pass you back to Sharon.
Okay, thanks, Clara. Okay, if you have any questions that come to mind during the event, feel free to pop those into the chat box, and we'll, depending on the time allowed, how much time we've got left, we will try and review those questions. But hopefully the presentation that's been prepared will answer virtually all of your questions anyway. So I will now hand over to Curt and Kiel. They're actually joining us from near Chicago today, but they have prepared a presentation on the ATA Carnet, and so let's hand over and hear their presentation.
Thank you again very much for having us, Sharon. I'm going to be doing a bulk of the presentation, but our president and CEO, Mr. Curt Wilson, is also here. Curt, did you want to say maybe just a few things about us, about Boomerang, before we start?
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Sharon, as well. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm the older guy here, so BIFA has been part of my professional world for many decades, along with the forwarder associations in the United States. So I'm looking forward to assisting in any way we can to shed some light on this peculiar document called the ATA Carnet, And we look forward to any questions that we can assist you with after the presentation. And I thank you all again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much. It looks like we got a decent sized crowd here. Again, my name is Kyle. It's just spelled funny. It looks like Kiel. I am a ATA Carnet specialist, mostly issuing on the US side of our operations. But one of the nice things about us being in both countries is we can handle after hours and overflow calls, nights, weekends, what have you, for our UK sister company. We partner with the Liverpool Chamber to issue ATA carnets for UK exporters. Let me just make sure I've taken control properly. And these slides are advancing, correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay, perfect. Again, that's Curt and I. A little bit of an agenda here. We will start with some introductory remarks. Next section, we'll go into an overview, kind of broad strokes of the ATA carnet. I'm not sure if anybody in this session has experience with carnets or not, but even if you do, hopefully you still learn at least a little bit of something here. Then we're going to delve a little bit deeper into the usage of the carnet, and then we'll end with some benefits and why it's a great export tool for temporary exports and temporary imports. And I'll apologize in advance if I do have to mute. I'm getting over a little bit of a nasty cold, so apologies in advance if I have to hit the cough button. First section, again, is the overview of the ATA carnet. Two main sections within that are what the carnet is, and then the countries and territories in which it is in fact. So as far as a little bit of historical context, carnet is really a tool for international trade facilitation. It is a money-saving tool, it is a time-saving tool, it is a hassle-saving tool with customs used for temporary imports of professional or commercial goods into a foreign country or territory. The International Convention began in the early 1960s. At that point, it was kind of just a small handful of Western European countries, but since then it really has spread to most of the industrialized world. I would say biggest gaps you'll see in carnet accepting countries are South and Central American countries and then most African countries. But new countries are coming on all the time. 2024 was a perfect example of that. We got 5 or so new countries, including some big ones for exporters like Vietnam came on, the Philippines came on, Peru came on, Saudi Arabia finally came on. That were working for it for a long time, but more countries are being added all the time. And each year, around 200,000 ATA carnets are issued internationally, covering goods more than $25 billion. So it really is, you can kind of see the grand scope of this system worldwide. In 2014, we partnered with the Liverpool Chamber, as I said before, to be the physical service provider and the issuing entity for ATA carnets to UK businesses and individuals. Most often, what we call the holder of the carnet, the liable party, is a company, but it can be used for individuals bringing their personal goods abroad, vehicles, small camera kits, what have you. Next slide here. I usually, what is it? So if you don't know, I usually read this part off verbatim. I think it's a great definition and it bears worth repeating. It is an international unified customs document, and it provides for temporary import duty and tax deferment for 3 main categories of goods, or what we call the underlying conventions as far as the intended use goes, to a worldwide system of countries. Those 3 categories are universal and they're international. Across all carnets that are issued, there are these 3 conventions. You can choose one if it's applicable. You can choose 2 if it's applicable. You could choose all 3. But that's part of our job as the carnet specialist and the issuing agent to, once your application is received, go through your itinerary, go through, your countries that you plan on visiting, and let you know, by and large, it is a very universal system. Most countries will accept for all 3 intended use conventions, but certain countries are pickier than others. Some only accept for exhibitions, some only accept for professional equipment, but by and large, most countries will accept for all. And these conventions are kind of loosely coined almost to a purpose. A lot of times you can get around the specific guidelines And if you ever have any questions about certain countries, we can get into that. But those 3 conventions are commercial samples, exactly what it sounds like. Anytime you are demoing your wares, if you are in the fashion industry or jewelry, or you make a widget and you want to go demo to clients in a foreign country on more of a private basis, one-on-one to try to drum up sales, you would file it under commercial samples. Professional equipment, also exactly what it sounds like. Anytime you are using that equipment in that foreign country under its professional capacity, a very large sect of carnet users or usage is the film production industry. If you can imagine trying to bring, $500,000 worth of fancy camera equipment into a foreign country, nobody wants to pay duty and tax when you're not going to be selling it. So the carnet and the security that goes behind it, the guarantee behind it, avoids for paying that what could be pretty hefty duties and taxes. But really anybody could be a professional equipment carnet user. Film, like I said, medical research, rock and roll bands, symphonies. We put horses on carnets. The list really goes on. And then the last one is exhibitions and fairs. So if your clients, your shippers are exhibiting at a foreign trade show and they want to bring their booth and all their samples, all that does have value. So a big usage of the ATA Carnet system is international trade shows, exhibitions, special events, trade fairs, what have you. So goods that are allowable on an ATA Carnet are really almost virtually anything. Anybody can be a Carnet user. That's what's so great about it. This is in no way on the left here. You'll see in no way an exhaustive list. It's just a few key ones that we see used, a little bit more often. Aircrafts, unmanned vehicles or uncrewed vehicles now is a very big industry that uses carnets. Those things are very expensive. And the list goes on: artifacts, jewelry, livestock, really anything. There are very few exceptions. Those would be any of your consumable or disposable items. So if, say, you're going to a trade show and you've got your little keychains and your hats and your pamphlets, your giveaway table swag, stuff like that, anything, or liquids or zip ties or disposable batteries, anything that's not going to come back out in the same form, fashion, quantity, volume, and essentially value would not be listed on the carnet. It's not to say that you can't ship or hand carry those goods with you. It just, because it's not a temporary import nature, even though you're not selling it, you wouldn't list it on the carnet. And then the last one is postal traffic.
Kyle,
yeah.
Let me add that you can ship restricted goods. In the United States, we have 2 selections of restricted goods. One is under Department of Commerce general license, and the other is under the State Department for military grade goods that are restricted and need a special export licensing. But you can use a carnet in conjunction with those types of commodities that fall into the restricted category list.
Yeah, most certainly. I get that question a lot from people like, I've got ITAR or export license stuff, I'm assuming I can't put it on the carnet, and you can. It doesn't absolve the need, of course, to follow those export requirements, but you definitely can use it for restricted goods. As far as the scope, it is accepted in 90 plus countries and territories. Again, more countries are coming on all the time. It is a single unified document. That little image there is the jacket, the folder that our carnets we issue come in. But it's one single unified document, and it can be used for multiple trips, multiple countries. That's another question I get a lot. Hey, I'm exhibiting in 3 different countries. I'm assuming I need 3 different carnets. And the answer is no, it's not trip or country specific to an extent, but it is good specific. So as long as you're shipping the same goods or a subsect of those goods, because you can do a partial shipment, and we'll get to that in a second, you can send it to 20 different countries throughout the year. And the more you use it, the more economical benefit you gain from it. And again, it is valid for 12 months from the date of issue. Fine print there, certain countries can limit the term of use. Perfect example is Mexico. They're very strict with a 6-month importation limit. You can ask for an extension, and that's something we would work with you on. But by and large, most countries will accept for the full 12 months. India, for example, if you're going in under professional equipment, they limit to 2 months. You can get one extension for up to 4 months. But again, that's part of our job as the specialist, is to advise you as any sort of country specific requirements as far as intended use, length of import, what have you. Another thing that's great about it is that it can work with both hand-carried items. Obviously, you guys are in the cargo world, but if you have clients that you're organizing hand-carried carnets, just as a service to them, including accompanying baggage, hand carriers anytime the holder is traveling with the goods, be it checked into the belly of the plane or carried on with them, or obviously cargo shipments, which is what you guys, I'm assuming, are going to experience the most of. It can be applied for directly by the freight forwarder or the customs broker, which is nice. That gives you the opportunity to provide, a bespoke, all-encompassing, full service experience to your clients. We can issue it directly to you. We can bill you, and then it just gets issued in the holder's name because they're the liable party. But you can come directly to us. They can be completely hands-off. And that's one of the nice things, is it can be issued to either party, or sometimes clients just come to us directly, of course. This we won't spend much time on. It's just a pretty little graphic that shows the countries and territories where the carnet is in force. Again, pretty much worldwide, 90 or so countries and territories. This next section here is the use of the carnet, so we'll go a little bit more fine-tuned with conditions to be observed with ATA carnet shipments, how the carnets work, and then we'll go a little bit over the document itself. So there are a few conditions. The big one that we always try to hammer home is you want to re-export the goods according to the terms of the carnet. Again, typically that is that 12-month time period, and certain countries will limit, but you have to get the goods out by either the expiration date, or if customs chooses to limit to a less than the 12 months. If you can't get the goods out within that 12-month period, most countries will accept what's called a replacement carnet. Not to get too deep into the weeds, it's not, oh, I lost the paperwork, I need a replacement. That in our world is called a duplicate carnet. Replacement is a unique carnet wherein it's a new carnet and new security that's issued, but it's tied directly to the original carnet, and it's used to extend the stay in the foreign country past that initial 12 months. So if you have a client that has a medical device that's on loan or being demoed to a university or a hospital, and the trial goes longer, if you reach out to us, a couple months before it expires, most countries you can extend that, but typically you want to get it out within the 12 months. The carnet document itself is always valid for 12 months from the date of issue, but with UK issued carnets, the security that goes behind it, the guarantee to customs that the duty and taxes would be paid, the whole way it works and the whole reason they don't get assessed duty and tax, can be purchased for either 2 months, 6 months, or 12 months, and that can be extended. So it's one of the nice things with a US issued carnet, it's always valid for 12 months. But with the UK, if you have a client that's going on a very short run and they know it's a single use and they're just going over to France to do a show, they can save a little bit of cost by doing a 2-month security rather than the full 12 months. And it can be extended. So if they think they only have one trial, and it's going to be a couple of weeks, they start with the 2 months. Well, hang on to your document, because 6 months later, if you need to go out again, we can do a security strengthening or extend and reissue that security for the full 12 months or what have you. You need to observe customs regulations, of course. We kind of just talked about that with any sort of export control or any sort of domestic or foreign customs regulations. You need to assume the liabilities if the goods are not re-exported. So timely reimbursement of any duties and or taxes paid by the guarantor. So if a claim comes, people just left it over there, didn't re-export, and the guaranteeing association paid that on the off put, you would need to reimburse that to them. Obviously, your client is the holder, it's their bill for duties and taxes. And that's one of the nice things about the carnet is you can use it as a temporary import tool, but say someone makes them an offer that they can't refuse and they want to sell those goods or convert it to consumption entry or permanent import, they can do that with the carnet. They don't need to re-export back to the UK and then send it right back to Germany as a permanent import. You can break that liability while in country and then pay the duties and taxes at that point. And then lastly, return the carnet timely to the Liverpool / us Liverpool Chamber after its use. It is currently still a manual paper document. So once it gets returned to our office, every carnet that's issued goes through a review process. It gets reviewed, it gets closed, and then that security gets canceled. They are working on, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. They are working on an e-carnet. Eventually, it's just going to be an app on your phone. Last I heard, I think they're hoping that by the end of 2027, it will be fully digital. I think that's kind of a lofty goal, but ultimately it will be an electronic thing. But currently, it is still paper, and it needs to be returned to us for closure.
Just one thing on the digital carnet, Kyle. Right now, the beta version of the digital carnet is predominantly for hand-carried shipments. They're working on a desktop application for brokers and forwarders that have multiple clients who get carnets, and they're running into a problem with the handheld version on your smartphone for working with forwarders, because it's not it doesn't fit into what a forwarder's role would be, as being both the application provider as well as monitoring the shipment. So there'll be some updates shortly that will get to BIFA to get out to its members when the change comes in and the development has moved on a little longer.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's going to be interesting for us who have always done the paper. It's going to be a weird strange transition period, but hopefully it's a good thing and not the opposite way. Again, we try to kind of really stress the main condition of timely re-export. The expiration date of the carnet is typically, again, unless you do an extension/replacement carnet, the expiration date is the date you want your items to be returned to the UK. If the items leave the foreign country after that expiration date, foreign customs could and would likely charge the full duty and tax and/or a regularization fee. This is a screenshot of one of what is called a counterfoil certificate. It's the trip-specific certificates, the counterfoils and vouchers, and we'll talk about that in a second. But if you look at this arrow and this circle here, this second box, when you get into a foreign country or the broker hands off the carnet to customs, always be cognizant that they do not limit to anything less than the 12 months. Again, certain countries do it on the whole. Certain countries, it's rare, but certain countries could do it on a case-by-case basis, but don't always necessarily assume that you have that full 12 months, because if they limit, then that final date of re-export takes the place and overrides that expiration date, the physical expiration date of the carnet. And if you look in the first box, it talks about the item numbers. Say there were 10 items and all 10 were being shipped on that one, they would put 1 through 10. This is an example of a split or partial shipment. Number 7 in this instance did not get exported. Again, that's one of the nice things about the carnet, is you can do a partial export. So you'll see customs validated 1 through 6, 8 through 10, showing that the goods never left the UK. So always make sure, if you are doing a partial import, to be very clear with customs exactly what is and what is not being shipped.
The final date of re-export is also covers the certain commodities. Some countries restrict certain commodities for less than a year, but that's why that date is very important when you're first temporarily importing into a country. And customs really doesn't tell you about that date or what it means when you're using your carnet and presenting it to import into a country. So it's very important that that date is watched. Most of the countries do it by their own temporary importation rules, and some countries limit the amount of time a temporary import can be in their country, but it all depends on the underlying conventions. But that date is very important.
Very. We talked about replacement carnets a little bit ago for extension past the initial validity, but if the paperwork gets lost, you can apply for what's called a duplicate carnet to replace it. One of the things that we offer as a service or a add-on when you're purchasing your carnet is what we call a lost, stolen, or destroyed carnet warranty. It's only 30 pounds, but what that does is it covers up to $600 of processing fees, which in 99% of instances, essentially you get a free duplicate carnet because the security carries over. You're not issuing a new security behind it, the guarantee, you're just paying the processing fees. So essentially, if you lose the carnet, you get a free, no-cost duplicate. It also can be used to draw, that 600 pounds can be used to be drawn upon to pay any sort of regularization fees. And then without the lost, stolen, destroyed warranty, you would need to obviously pay for a duplicate. So it's kind of like a drop in the bucket. I would say 95, if not more, percent of holders and forwarders elect for it, but it's one of the nice features with the carnet purchasing costs is you can protect yourself in the event it does get lost, stolen, or destroyed. It's paper. Things happen. We've heard everything under the sun as far as these things getting lost or destroyed. As far as
in the
yep.
UK, a duplicate is called a substitute carnet, and the carnet number that's on your carnet document, if it's a substitute carnet, it'll say /S as in Sam, and that stands for substitute. So it's easy to identify by those little distinguishing marks and or numbers after the carnet number.
And it also helped that S is an indicator of why there's no, it's a blank carnet essentially, even though it's been used before. That shows to customs that, well, the original is lost. You're not going to go retrace all those in and out stamps. Those moves have already been made. You just kind of pick up and carry on from there. As far as conditions to close the carnet, again, we hammer it home. You want to re-export by the expiration date or the final date of re-export if they limit it. As far as foreign customs goes, proper validation upon import and re-export. So next couple of slides will show you, but it gets stamped out of the UK by UK customs upon export, gets stamped into the foreign country upon import by foreign customs, and then on the reverse, it's the reverse. So it'll get stamped out of the foreign country, and then one last time coming back into the UK, it'll be stamped by UK customs coming back in. So proper validation is key. The carnet, again, gets returned in its physical form so that we can close it out and cancel the security, and then improper use could be a condition where we wouldn't be able to close it, like if there's missing stamps or missing pages or physical missing items that weren't accounted for by foreign and UK customs. So this is a brief graphic, if nobody's seen a carnet before. Internationally, across every carnet that's issued, the front and back cover pages, kind of the bookends of the carnet, and we'll get to what those are in a second, are green in color. The yellow exportation, counterfoils, and vouchers, and we'll get to those in a second, are for use by the origin country. So in your case, UK is the yellow pages. The white counterfoils and vouchers are for foreign customs. Those get stamped entering and exiting the foreign country. If you do have experience with carnets, you may very well have never seen blue counterfoils and vouchers in there. There's only a handful of countries that use them. They're called transit counterfoils. A lot of times they're used for bonded inland travel, but there are 6 countries that, whether or not they use them, in addition to the whites that every foreign country uses, require them to be in the carnet. So Bulgaria, China, Italy, Poland, Russia, and Switzerland, we would make sure that you have the blues just in the chance that they did want to use it. And then the back cover again is green. So that was in order of its issue. It's always going to be the same color pages. It's always going to be the same order no matter what country you get your carnet from. This is in order of usage, and I'll try to breeze through this just in the interest of time. We have other presentations that go into exactly what the pages look like, and we can provide that backup sample if you guys want. But the front cover is kind of like the heart of the carnet. It's got all your official identification. It's got your issue date. It's got your expiration date. It's got all your holder info. It's got your list of authorized representatives. So any forwarders, brokers, third-party freight agents that are going to be involved in the round shipment, the holder would list those as authorized representatives. So customs knows that they have the authority to move the goods and present the carnet for validation to customs on their behalf. And that's all on the front. Of course, your carnet number is on there, your unique ID carnet number. And then on the reverse side of that front green cover page is what we call your master general list. And it's another deceptive term in our world. It's not general, it's more of an itemized, each piece on its own line, ideally, unless it's minor value stuff, rather than needing things like, you know, the customs HS codes. It's more physical identifiers for the description, things like make, model, and serial number, or part number, or, you know, item number, anything that customs can use to identify the goods and make sure that clearly what's in front of them is what's listed on the carnet, that gets listed on there. That's the first column is the description, second column is the quantity, third column is the weight. A UK issued carnet, if you don't know what each individual item weighs, the Guaranteeing Association, the London Chamber, dictates that at least a full aggregate, a total weight, needs to be listed, but ideally you want to itemize each weight of each item. And then the value of the item, of course, which is the insured or replacement value. And then last category is the country of origin, which is the manufacturing country of the goods. So the holder would provide you an itemized list, almost akin to a commercial invoice, but more, again, physical identifiers. And then you provide that to us. We'll pick it apart. We'll format it for you. That's part of our job, is to make sure it gets into the correct carnet format. So we kind of know what customs likes to see on that. We'll work with you on that. So that's the front green. Yellow certificates, the counterfoils, stay in the carnet document always. That's the record that stays in the carnet of the export and the re-import of the goods from the UK and back into the UK. But each one of the counterfoil boxes, export one, re-import one, export two, re-import two, and so on, however many they need, also has its corresponding voucher sheet. So the vouchers, that's the receipts, so to speak, for UK customs. So when it goes to leave the UK, they'll stamp the export counterfoil showing the goods were exported, whatever number that is, and then they'll take, stamp and sign and remove and keep, they'll retain that corresponding voucher. So the counterfoil stay in the carnet, that's the holder's record. Vouchers stay with UK customs upon export. Then you fly it over to whatever country, lands in foreign customs. The white importation counterfoil will get stamped and signed. Again, that stays in the carnet. That corresponding white importation voucher will be stamped and signed by foreign customs and kept as their receipt. They go, they do their show or their job or what have you, going to leave the foreign country. Again, you'll approach foreign customs, let them know the goods are being re-exported under the carnet. They will stamp and sign that corresponding re-exportation counterfoil, again, stays in the carnet, and then they'll stamp and sign and remove and keep that corresponding voucher. That way, when this carnet expires, foreign customs will have record, a physical receipt, a physical document showing that the goods were imported on this date, they were re-exported on this date, and that's how they avoid a claim. They know they followed the rules, they got it out in time, what have you. The blues are the blues. Again, a lot of times you won't see those on there. Foreign customs, if they do use them, will more than likely use them in addition to the whites, not in lieu of. And then finally coming back into the UK, you'll see the yellow comes back, clears through UK customs. They'll stamp and sign that re-importation counterfoil. Again, stays in the carnet. And then they'll stamp and sign that re-import voucher and remove that. So UK customs also has proof of the export and the re-import. And then the back cover is kind of just notes on the carnet, the list of all the foreign guaranteeing associations. It's got the contact info for the agent and the issuing authority who issued your carnet, and that's in order of use. Last section here, let me see how we are on time. Last section here is the benefit section. So we'll talk about benefits, some tips of do's and don'ts, and then we'll end with our contact info, and then we will turn it over to question and answer. So why do people use the carnet? The key one is a vastly, it's a great money-saving tool, fund-saving tool. It's one affordable fee. It covers all the goods you want to list onto it for up to the full 12 months. You don't have to pay the high import duties and taxes. You don't have to work with a broker in the foreign country to file a broker bond, like a TIB, a temporary import bond, into each and every country. It's used for all the countries you want to go to. You don't have to worry about like a duty drawback or a VAT recovery system. It's simple. It's cost saving. It saves time. It also acts as the registration of the goods with UK customs. So if you guys have ever worked with like the duplicate list, you wouldn't need to do that when you're doing a carnet shipment. That front cover and the yellow counterfoils that act as that registration, so it saves extra paperwork. You wouldn't have to fill out the duplicate list, and it's versatile. Again, multiple countries, the more you use it, the more economical it becomes. and it's ready to go. You've got it on hand. You can travel at the drop of a hat. Certain other chambers have, different issuing times. One of the things that allows us to stay so competitive is how quickly we process carnets. We practice on average a 24 to 48-hour turnaround time. We can do same-day carnets. We can print in Liverpool. We can print in London. We can print in the Bristol area. So if somebody really, really needs to ship and we can't wait for Royal Mail to overnight it to you, or if there was a delay with Royal Mail, we can do same-day carnets, print for pickup, and then you have it on hand. You can travel pretty much instantaneously. Here's just some brief examples of carnet utilization. Again, professional equipment's a big one, including tools of the trade. So if you're going to do a repair, all your tooling, conferences, demos, manufactured goods, trade shows, special events, research, training, prototype, samples, the list goes on as far as the ways that you can utilize a carnet. And it's important for holders to not kind of get pigeonholed as far as the way they use their carnets. I've got people that only ever use it for trade shows, but then they have a light bulb moment and realize that they send technicians out, with thousands of pounds worth of equipment. You can use it in many different ways, and that's one of the nice things, how broad and overarching the system is. This is a very handy slide on our website. We've got these in full, like, paragraph and more detail, but these are what we call our top 10 best practices. In summary form, I'm just going to read these off verbatim just so we can make sure to leave enough time for Q&A. You want to know your obligations and responsibilities for you as the forwarder and for the holder if they're hand carrying. You want to read and follow the instructions. We provide step-by-step instructions in the jacket of the folder. Always also call us. We can walk you through it if you haven't done it before, or if it's been some time. Require employee training as far as using the carnet. Retain a copy of the unused carnet, so when you get it, make a full scan copy of it. Then keep track of the expiration dates, of course, return it to us on time, get it out of the foreign country in time. Provide regular notification to your customer, so let them know, okay, here we got it out, here's a scan of the UK export stamp, it finally got into India, here's another scan. Just make sure that they're notified so they have a peace of mind of that the carnet is being used correctly, their shipment is moving properly. Use our online reports, so within your account you have a vast array of reporting for all the different clients that you can apply for carnets on. Use the expiration notifications. We will send, hey, there's 3 months left, are you done? Send it back to us, 2 months left, what have you. Make a copy of the used carnet prior to returning it. That is key. Usually I recommend scan it or at least snap a picture on a phone every time it's used or stamped by customs, but especially before you return it to our office for closure. One, for your and your shipper's records, of course, but almost more importantly, just in case it were to, say, get lost in the mail on the return to us, we would want at least a digital paper trail of what happened with all the customs stamps, just to help in any sort of potential claims purposes if we have that record, if there was a missing stamp somewhere, but we do know it was stamped back into the UK. We have an entire phenomenal department dedicated to fighting claims like that. So make a scanned copy before it comes back. And then the last is try to go with that warranty so you don't have to be out of pocket if it does get lost in its physical form. So as far as tips for dues, again, our turnaround is very quick, 24 to 48 hours, but try to submit at least a few days before the export so we have time to go through all the itinerary with you, go through, what countries may or may not accept. And then, of course, if there's any sort of delivery delays with Royal Mail or what have you. So try to plan on submitting early if you can. You always, before shipping, especially if it's on a subsequent use, like it's been some time, it's a third or fourth use, inspect the carnet before it goes out for accuracy. Make sure that all the authorized representatives are listed correctly. If there's a new player involved, like a new broker or a new forwarding party, we can always issue an authorized representative letter post the issuance of the carnet to add representatives. So make sure that that list is bulletproof before it goes out. Review the list of goods, double, triple check serial numbers. That's a big thing with customs and carnets, is the serial numbers. You can order more counterfoils and vouchers if you need to. Again, it's a very nominal cost. They're not expensive, but you don't want to say start off with, oh, they might make 20 shipments, and then maybe they only make 2 because that's just out of cost. But you can always order more certificates if they do run out, and then alert customs of any split or partial shipments. You want to know the customs regulations and availability. So check with the cargo office, make sure there's going to be someone there, see if they have like a drop off or screening window, like how long it's going to take them to process it. So you can make sure to follow your client's needed timeline, make sure you know where the office is, the hours, locations, what have you. Schedule an appointment if shipping on the weekends or holidays, if at all possible. And then hand carries can benefit with what we call our interactive airport maps. Our website, it's boomerangcarnets.co.uk. Just check it out. There's really a wealth of information on there. A lot of, if you're ever applying for a hand carry, we've got a vast collection of airport/customs maps. So for like Heathrow or Gatwick or foreign countries, then you can direct your client to that page and they'll have phone numbers. There'll be a map of where customs is located. It's a really handy tool, especially for hand carries. You want to make sure the countries are in line with what you need. Look up the advisories. We've got a list of every advisory for every country on our website. Again, certain ones have specific rules and requirements. Mostly it's universal, but certain ones are pickier about certain things. And then again, more countries are added as it goes, but really just call us. It is not a line. We are truly available 24/7, especially with being in both countries. Curt takes calls in the middle of the night, probably way more often than he would care to admit. But he's always got at least one of us on operations reserved on call. And again, we can provide after hours support with the time difference and stuff like that. We're 6 hours behind you guys with our US operations. As far as don'ts, try not to wait till the last minute. Apply early if you can. Don't make any physical changes to the list of goods. Once the carnet has been issued, while you can ship less items with a split or partial export, you can't add items because of the security that goes behind it. And you can't, if one breaks, you can't swap out one for another one with another serial number. And don't cross out anything on the master general list. The voucher pages do have a duplication of your list. You can cross out items on a partial on those, but don't ever cross it off your master because that would prohibit you from using it again and potentially shipping those items again. Don't remove any pages for the from the carnet. Customs will remove the vouchers, but make sure that you're not removing anything. And then don't slap it in a shipping pouch on the outside of a crate. It is a paper document. It is more than likely going to get lost. Usually what an experienced forwarder will do will bring the carnet and the goods to the port of export. They'll have the carnet stamped and signed by UK Customs, put the goods on the cargo plane, but then courier the carnet independently through a Royal Mail or what have you, with FedEx, UPS, DHL, to the counterpart in the foreign country, who then has a trackable method of receiving that carnet, has it in hand, waiting for that shipment to clear. If you send it unattended, like I said, in a shipping pouch on the side of a crate, it's probably going to get ripped off and lost. And then don't discard the carnet. A lot of times people say, oh, I'm done with it, I'll throw it out, because again, it does need to be returned to our office. Things happen, it does get lost. There's no penalty, so to speak, for not returning it, but that's just longer that we can't close it out and cancel that security liability off the holder's account. And don't panic, we are here. We truly do care. Curt is one of the most passionate people I've ever met about customer service and customer satisfaction, and he has imparted that on everybody on both sides of the pond. We really do care. We are here for you. This is what we do. This is all we do. And I'm going to turn it over to Curt with these last couple of slides here to talk about what we call the boomerang benefit, as we are in both the US and the UK. And then we'll get over to the Q&A.
Thank you, Kyle.
Mhm.
I learn something every time I listen to you.
Sure.
The boomerang benefit is a term coined because of our proximity in both countries, and our what we call our remote printing network, which is throughout the United States in all the major ports, as well as some private located printers or for companies that do quite a number of carnets, as well as forwarders. So we have that tie-in. So if you're in the UK, you're shipping to the United States, and your forwarding operation happens to have a subsidiary company either under the same name or under contract with you to handle the import side of an export coming out of the UK under a carnet. So, and vice versa. We have that available in both countries. And we're the only service provider in the ATA Carnet system that is in 2 countries. And we're quite proud of that because it makes sense. You know, when Brexit hit, there was a new need for getting a carnet because just to go to the EU, which is one customs territory still, was a very new thing. So it was the training we had to go through, and you know, new players in the carnet business, and it's been quite helpful for a temporary export. You know, the same day carnet is what Kyle had referenced. You know, we can get a carnet issued to you and able to be picked up the same day. There's some additional fees for that, but we make it as convenient as possible, having these different offices that hold a Boomerang Carnet as a remote printing facility. So you can, you know, we have near Heathrow and up in Liverpool, of course, and across the UK. You know, I'm sure in your forwarding exploits, everyone has heard of the single window system, and the single window, to define it in simple terms, is an export becomes the import data. So there's less data that's exchanged and shared from the origin being the export into the destination country. And that's the single window trade that basically the shipments are moving these days. They call it the single window. It saves time, saves money clearing goods through customs, and also can be used as a new revenue stream, a service that you're providing for your shipper customers that you know, turn the responsibility over to the forwarder. And we work with, you know, dozens of freight forwarders in the UK and dozens of freight forwarders and customs house brokers in the US. And you know, that relationship is strong. We're, you know, we categorize those as strategic partners. And you know, my team of specialists in the UK and the US will handhold anyone who's familiar. A first-time carnet users is you know, very apprehensive because they're not familiar with this document, and our specialists, you know, do great hand-holding, and we're always available. And you know, that's basically the Boomerang benefit is, you know, you're never out of our sight. These are just some of the industries that we put up here that we cover. Obviously, the entertainment business and you know, equipment rental houses that you know, are getting equipment to do a photo shoot or film documentary, what has it. We're versed in these types of commodities, and you know, and then that's where the forwarder is very key. So I believe that's it on the Boomerang benefit.
And then this, again, this slide deck, the recording will be available, the slide deck will be available, but this is just Curt's direct email for the UK, my direct, our direct UK phone numbers. Again, this is our website, boomerangcarnets.co.uk. Do yourself a favor, at least poke around on it. There really is endless, you know, valuable information about the carnet system in general, the countries, how it's used. We have video resources. We have click to call, click to chat. Our, you know, general line is not like any other in the US 800 number where you're going to be battling through menus to try to get somebody on the phone. We practice 2 to 3 rings at tops as long as we're in business hours. And we do take calls. Curt, you know, fields calls and gets you over to the on-call agent after hours. But during hours, you're going to get me or somebody else on our operations team within a couple of rings. So we make it as convenient as we can with that. And then that's our our email address, Pretty easy, info@boomerangcarnets.co.uk. You should get an answer back, usually in minutes, but definitely within an hour or two during normal business hours through email. And then I will turn it over back to Sharon as far as I'll stop the share.
Okay, yeah. Just take control.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Curt. Thank you, Kyle. That was very interesting. We have had quite a lot of questions come through the chat, but we will first look at the questions that have already been submitted. So my colleague Shelby is going to read out the questions and then allow you to provide an answer.
Hello. How is the guarantee calculated for a carnet?
Curt, do you want to take it or do you want me to take it?
Go ahead.
So the guarantee with a US carnet, not that that really affects you, it's always 40% of the value, regardless of where you're going, except for India, which is 55%, and it's always valid for a 12-month period. With a UK issued carnet, there's a whole behind-the-scene matrix. It's dictated by the Guaranteeing Association, which is, again, the London Chamber of Commerce. It's not something that you guys have access to run, quoting through, but we do. So if you ever need a quote as far as the security and the total costs and everything, including ancillary, just pop us an email or give us a call. We can do it right there over the phone. But it's dictated by things such as a key one is the total value of the goods. Another one is the commodity types. With the UK guarantee, it differs for sports equipment versus computer equipment versus vehicles versus fashion samples. And then it's also dictated by the foreign country and or countries and their guarantee and duty and tax rates, as well as the length of stay of the trip. So the total value of the goods, the type of goods, the destination country and or countries, and then the length if you want to do that 2-month, 6-month, or a 12-month guarantee.
So
But
quite a
always just-
complicated sum.
It is a little bit.
Well, the premise behind what the guarantee amount is based on, if you go to 4 or 5 countries, the guarantee amount based on the value is calculated by the country in which has the highest combined duty and tax ratio. So if you're going to United States, Canada, Australia, and China, China will probably be the highest combined duty and tax amount, and that's how the guarantee is calculated. It's, as I say in my rough English manner, it's a cockamamie way to do it. A guarantee is basically a surety product, and it's a kind of a weird way to calculate it.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me.
Can you tell me more about digital ATA carnets?
Yes, we can. Right now, there is a 5-country beta program going on, and I know you'll ask me those countries, and maybe I'll remember, but it's pretty much a stalled process right now because of the need for customs in all the carnet countries to get ramped up to be able to accept a digital carnet. And that's why we're all a little skeptical on the final date where it's ramped up. But there's been 2 tests made, one out of the UK and one out of the United States. And it was, a carnet in the United States, a digital carnet can only be exported out of JFK International Airport as one of the test countries. And the one that came out of the UK early last year was going to the US. So, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't. It was going into the EU. There's only been 2 tests with the UK and the United States. Switzerland is in there. Canada is part of the trial period. Russia was in there and China was in there, but due to political climate these days, they haven't done much with the digital carnet as far as testing.
And the way they're doing it, at least initially, is again, as Curt said, it's hand carries to start. They're doing the physical processing of the manual paper carnet, like has always been done since the 60s, but then also validating the digital carnet. And customs are busy. I'm sure everybody has experience with customs, asking them to say, okay, do what you've always done, but then also, help the system grow by going into this digital is often easier said than done. And if you could try to imagine getting 90 or so countries and territories at every port on board with the training and technology to accept what was always a paper document, I think it's going to take some time, but it should happen. It should happen.
Okay, thank you. When goods have been left in the EU and a carnet has expired, how do you go about bringing your goods back?
Good question. Happens quite often. In the UK, well, the carnet is made up of conditional and unconditional release of the goods. So if a carnet is expired, a HMRC does have the discretion to still validate an expired carnet. Do they do that often? No, they don't. Because once you see a document, it's basically a human nature type of thing. Once you see a document that's expired, you're not going to accept it. So you'd have to file an entry and provide the customs import guarantee in order to have that entry accepted. It's a little extra work that we always try to avoid by talking to that customs office and explaining that you can conditionally validate the carnet and allow the re-entry back into the UK, but they tend not to do that, and then there has to be an entry filed if HMRC doesn't accept an expired carnet.
This is one of the reasons why why you've pointed out so clearly, keep a note of the expiry date and
Yeah.
and you send reminders out as well. Yeah.
Well, during the pandemic, that was happening a lot because
Yeah.
a lot of the exporters, shippers couldn't get goods on a vessel or booked because nothing was moving.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of concessions made, and there was quite a bit of back and forth in order to manage the violation because of the shutdown. But we're past that, and that's why it's very important. Most carnets issued in the world are only utilized for 30 to 60 days.
Mhm.
A huge portion of the carnets issued globally are shipped out and returned within a month or two. It's very rare that they stay out for, it happens, but it's normally a one-off or two-off country that they use the carnets in, and then they're back with a short amount of time. That's why the UK allows you to purchase the guarantee in 2-month, 6-month, or 12-month increments.
Thank you. What happens when they get lost by couriers or generally lost by accident?
That's where we talked about the duplicate, or in the UK, substitute carnet. It's a new set of paperwork. The guarantee that was posted from the original does carry over, and as Curt alluded to, it ends in a /s for substitute. So you would just apply for a duplicate if it was lost. It depends on where it was lost. If it was lost in the foreign country or territory, you would still need to have it activated by UK customs prior to sending it abroad. They're not stamping off on the export on the yellow counterfoil. Obviously, that move has already been made, but they still do need to validate and activate the front green cover page. If it's, UK side, when it's lost, they'll just activate it when they go to do the next export, but that's solved by getting a substitute carnet.
Well, and that activation for replacement carnets and substitute carnets is done at the National Carnet Unit up in Salford, near Manchester. That's the office that controls the carnets in the UK. And being up in Liverpool, which is very close to Salford, we have a kind of a direct inroad to the Salford office, the National Carnet Unit. If there's extenuating circumstances where we need to push them a little bit to understand our plight.
Mhm.
Can ATA carnets be used for road and air movements or just road?
Can
No,
be used,
they can use
Go ahead.
both.
And it's not limited to just one or the other. You could send it there air and then send it back road or vessel if it's like a time frame thing and you need to get it out quickly, but then you want to save the cost and then bring it back slower. That's totally fine. You could do all road this time, all air next time. It's both interchangeably.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is that all the pre-sent questions?
Yes. Yeah. Do you want to handle the chat box, Shelby?
Yeah. Okay. Is it a rule of thumb that carnet is cleared on point of entry into a region? For example, in UAE, would you clear in DXB if transiting onward to MCT?
As far as the carnet itself and the holder and the shipper is concerned, it can be validated at any port. Typically, it's customs contention, though, that they want to see it validated at the final port of export from a country or territory and the first port of import into a country and territory. But as far as the carnet is concerned, as long as it gets stamped out of the UK, into and out of the foreign country, and back into the UK, it can be done anywhere. It's just you got to check with customs on their preference.
I'm assuming that question is related to the airport in Dubai, right? And is it traveling within the UAE down to, say, Abu Dhabi? Is that what the question is getting at here?
Yeah, so for example, United Arab Emirates, would you clear in Dubai if transiting onto the other country if you started?
Well, it's the first country of import that you would get the carnet validated going in.
Okay, yeah. I sent some goods to an exhibition in the USA and I want to send the same goods to an exhibition in Dubai. If there are enough vouchers on the carnet, can I use the same document I sent to the USA for the exhibition in Dubai?
100%, but would always, if you didn't apply for that country, call us and we might need to just do a strengthening of the security. As long as you have or order additional certificates, you can go to 20 different countries with that same kit. But if you originally only applied because the guarantee is also country specific, just call us if it's a new country and we'll see if we need to strengthen that security for you.
Plus, there's the intended use concern. If you applied to go to the US and you have Dubai is only accepts exhibitions and fairs, the UAE. So that's when you call us and say, help.
And then we get very creative.
Thank you. You mentioned livestock and horses. What happens if the animal dies before being returned to origin? Is a veterinary declaration sufficient to close the carnet, or do you have to return the body?
I'll let Curt handle that one, or the one where we sent an elephant and then it was pregnant and we didn't know, and there was an increase in value when the elephant was born.
Remember, the elephant has a gestation period of over a year and a half. So you would not normally have to or even want to return the carcass of a horse. Vet certs are the way to go, and if possible, get the vet cert validated by the customs when you're exporting it, because that's the life of the horse is over, and so it's technically not within the commerce of that country, so it's non-dutiable. There are obviously rules about the disposal of a dead horse. But as far as customs is concerned, it's no longer in the commerce of that country, which it means it's not dutiable or taxable, even if it wasn't re-exported.
Not even including livestock or living beings. There's a way to, like, I just had Tesla as a client of ours, sending their demo vehicles. They just sent one to Germany and they called me and said, Kyle, we don't want it back. It's run its course. There's a way where if you're not selling and you don't want to re-export, most countries will allow for the destruction of the vehicle or the whatever the equipment is in the direct presence and or supervision of customs. They'll provide you an ancillary form. So if they realize, again, it's not part of the commerce at that point because it's being destroyed under their supervision, then you should negate the need for paying the duties and taxes.
Thank you. After an initial 12-month carnet is granted, how long can you extend it further for?
If a country, so they're not really an extension, so to speak. The only one is that replacement carnet if the goods are in a foreign country and you can't get it out or it doesn't make economical sense to send it back to the UK and then back under a new carnet. Most 99% of countries will accept that replacement carnet. Rule of thumb is you get one. UK, like for instance, people that send our US carnets to the UK, they have a hard and fast rule that HMRC will only accept one replacement, but certain countries are more lenient. Like Germany, I've seen people get 2 replacements, 3 replacements, so a total of 4 years in country. But as you go past that first one, you need to, 1, get direct approval from foreign customs, and it gets less and less likely that they're going to approve it. I think the record in my almost 10 years at the company, I saw one that went like 13 replacements in Turkey. And I think it was Turkey. They were working like directly with the government. And at one point, our guaranteeing association said, look, I don't care how many letters, how many approvals you can show me. This should have never went over there for over a decade, 15 years under a carnet. But you can get longer. As far as extension or renewal, if it's within the UK, you would just apply for a new carnet for a new year. There's not really a re-up or anything.
Okay. Can carnets be used for equipment going abroad for repairs if the value doesn't change?
Very tricky question.
The word repair is a 4-letter word in carnet world. Repairs are usually maintenance. And as long as you don't advance the duty or advance the value by adding something to that Formula One race car that increases its value, whatever that change that's been made, that's why repairs, customs doesn't like repairs because it advances the value, and that advanced value will be higher than the carnet's declared value. And so they could require a strengthening of an import guarantee. With carnets, it usually doesn't get viewed in the way that would cause customs to feel they have bond insufficiency or guarantee insufficiency. So it's a good question though, because there are a lot of technicians that have tools of the trade that do repairs or recalibration, but that usually doesn't advance the value, so it's acceptable.
Yeah, if it's an under the hood type of change, an update, software update, calibration, maintenance, and customs wouldn't see that it's coming out with a totally different serial number, or it was a beater vehicle that comes out as a muscle car, that's usually where it's not an issue.
If it's just goods that are being moved specifically for repair, my understanding is that there is export processing relief, so you would export it for the repair and then bring it back again under that relief. It's a while since I've looked at these things, but that used to be the case. At least you wouldn't use a carnet for shipping something just for a repair, in my understanding.
Well, you would use a carnet for the tools that would perform the repair.
possibly.
the reverse. If you're going over there to do repairing and you have machines into doing that, but usually the goods being under the carnet that are being repaired in the foreign country is where it gets a little dicey.
What happens if the carnet is lost abroad after it's been used already with stamps and you have no record of the carnet stamps?
Well, that's not a good position to be in, but that's when we issue the substitute carnet, if it's, if it's needed to bring goods back, then that's when the substitute comes into play. And if the carnet is lost, if it's hand carried or even a cargo shipment, you're going to have documentation outside of the carnet that shows where the goods went, the dates, and you put those together, and or the substitute acts as the re-importation back into the UK. Once the substitute is put into the hands, we process it, we get it activated, and then we send it so you can facilitate the return of the goods back to the UK and have that substitute carnet be the proof that the goods came back. So if there's any issue with goods going into a country under a carnet outside the UK and you don't have proof of re-export, the proof of re-importation back to the UK acts as that proof and would negate any claim for duties and taxes that would be issued by that foreign country.
And that's why we always recommend, and sometimes easier said than done for especially with hand carries, people forget or what have you, but always try to make a scan, or if the best you can do is snap some pictures of the custom stamps after they happen on your mobile phone. Try to keep that digital paper trail throughout the life of the carnet. Try to scan it after every time it gets stamped, so at least you can present that as backup ammunition or evidence to customs if you have that.
Okay,
That's one of our pipe dreams that no one ever does.
Right, that's the thing.
Is it a possibility, good practice, if a manufacturer is going through a testing phase for a new product, using carnets for each prototype to get a 12-month carnet for each serial number and keep applying for more vouchers? Could a vehicle carrying multiple items use more than one carnet when it reaches the border for stamping?
When you say vehicle, is that a transit vehicle?
It just says a vehicle.
I'm assuming it's the vehicle that's used to transit into the EU.
For a road shipment.
Yeah.
The person has it.
Okay. See, using carnets for each prototype to get a 12-month carnet for each serial number. We would like that because it would produce more carnets. I'm not sure it's needed, but usually when you have prototype and you're going into the EU, you're going to try to get to as many countries as possible. That's why multiple carnets might be logistically easier to get those carnets into different countries, and much easier to split up that shipment once it gets into the EU under its own carnets. But again, in the EU, it's kind of an oxymoron. You don't need the carnet at every border crossing in the EU. It's one customs territory, which leads to other issues. But that's the beauty of the flexibility of an ATA carnet, is that you can put multiple items on it, move it around the EU, and the carnet doesn't have to be there. So that's the economic decision you have to make. If you're taking goods under one lorry into the EU and then you're splitting it up, then and you're going back to the UK a different way, or you're going out of the EU, then maybe multiple carnets would be easier to logistically control than one carnet. It gives you more freedom of movement.
Okay, I think Shelby would just do one more.
I hope I answered that question, and if I didn't, Connor Rochelle asked that. Connor, if you're listening, you can certainly contact us direct and we can have a chat about that in a little more detail.
I think we'll just do one more question, Shelby. We're running out of time now.
Okay, I'll just do a random one. What would you do if your goods got separated from the carnet, say goods were shipped and the carnet was left behind? Or what would you do if goods got shipped, some got left behind in one country and your carnet was also left in a different country to all the cargo?
Get down on your knees. Actually, another good question. The key is, things happen when goods are out of the UK, right? They happen whether it's, weather delays or what have you. So the key is, once all the goods get back into the UK and the declaration needs to be presented, the re-import declaration, then you'll have to go through, depending if the carnet's lost, then you don't have anything to do. So you'd have to file an entry and customs would accept that entry, and you'd have to document that these goods are on a certain carnet number, and the entry would be accepted, and that would stand as the proof to other carnet countries that are don't have proof of export. Once you have full proof of re-import back to the UK, that would negate or should negate all the non-validations of non-re-export out of a country based on a lost carnet or just customs. And one of the problems we're running into more frequently than ever in my 40-year career in carnets is customs isn't open like they used to be. With the economy changing, with the loss of labor, even in customs, there's a labor shortage. So, customs is closed more than they're open sometimes. And it all depends on the country. And, that's where you need us to help you find out where to take the pipe and take the wrench and tap the pipe at the right place. And we're willing to do that for our customers. So I know that's kind of an open-ended answer, but, I haven't seen any one carnet that's similar or it mirrors other carnets. Each deal has its different twists, and that's why I emphasize customer service so much, is because the export community in the UK just is not that familiar with it because it's only been around for 2 or 3 years. The need to get a carnet because of Brexit. So that's a lot of hand-holding, but it's worth it. And we would rather spend a lot of time coaching you than spend a lot of time chasing down a claim.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
welcome.
thank you. Thanks. I'm just going to very quickly run through our closing slides. Dates for in-person and virtual events are to be confirmed, so just keep an eye out on your emails and the Young Forwarder Network LinkedIn page for details. There are the regional meetings as well. The dates of those are listed on bifa.org/events. You are welcome to come along to regional meetings. They're not just for your managers, etc., but we do welcome young forwarders as well along to those. BIFA Link TV, hopefully you've all heard about BIFA Link TV. So if you want to subscribe to that, you can use the QR code to subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's lots of various information goes out Monday to Friday on BIFA Link TV. Last week saw the ceremony for the BIFA Freight Service Awards. Some of you will be aware of that. We had the Apprentice of the Year finalists all came along and collected their certificates, as did the Young Freight Forwarder of the Year finalists. And we announced the winners of each category. So the Young Freight Forwarder of the Year is Thomas Beddox of DHL Global Forwarding. Some of you will know Thomas. He is the chair of the Heathrow Young Forwarder Network. So some of you will have met him at various events. So congratulations, Thomas, on your win. And the Apprentice of the Year is Joseph Freestone of Woodland Group. And again, Joseph is active in the Young Forwarder Network, so some of you will also know Joseph. So congratulations to both Thomas and Joseph. I'm sure we'll be seeing and hearing more from them in the future. So just a reminder, follow the Young Forwarder Network on LinkedIn, and there'll be posts there of all events that are coming up in the future. And so finally, thank you. Thank you, Curt. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
It's been very interesting, very informative. There were a couple of questions we didn't cover, so perhaps if you don't mind, I'll send them to you and you can do a very quick answer to them that we can share with everybody.
That would be
Certainly.
great.
Okay.
Yeah, and thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
having us. I hope that people gleaned some info and it was helpful for the attendees.
Yes. And as we said, we will share the recording with everybody that attended. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank
Have
you.
a great
Thank you,
day.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.